Welcome back, Deep Threat Sports Network fans. I'm here with Garrett Jaggers with another episode of Foul 'em Hard. We are ecstatic to be back. Life's been busy. We talked about that on our college football show, but the basketball season is full tilt now. We're in some conference play, and Garrett and I felt like we should get back in the lab and give you guys an update. Once we got past the holidays, the hunting seasons, and all the sicknesses that everybody's had, we are here. But man, Garrett, college basketball has been fantastic. We've had a lot of surprises good, a lot of surprises bad. Some of these teams are impressing us. We have teams like Rutgers who had high expectations, just kind of throwing them out there real quick. They had really high expectations, had probably their best recruiting class. I think actually truly their best recruiting class of all time with Harper and Ace Bailey. And they've had a kind of a tough stretch at it here, but we're going to dive into all these conferences, the power conferences, the blue bloods. Garrett, how you been, buddy?
Good, man. It's good to be back, Colin. I hope you guys enjoyed the holiday.
Absolutely, absolutely. So first conference we're going to talk about here, we're going to dive right into this thing, is the ACC. Garrett, go ahead and tell me what you're seeing with the ACC so far, how the conference is kind of shaping up, and really what you have on your plate for them.
Yeah, so rounding out the ACC, we got, obviously sitting at the top, probably the most dominant team we've seen in the ACC in quite some time. Duke is sitting at 8-0. They're at the top at the ACC. Behind them, we have Louisville, Clemson, Wake Forest, all in a semi-tie for second with one loss. We have Carolina in the fifth spot at 5-2. We kind of got a jumbled mess from 5 until about 14, 15. But surprisingly, to me, we have Virginia sitting at 1-6, Miami at 0-7. Two teams that historically are usually near the top of the ACC, having a really tough time this year.
The craziest part for me is what I have down for me on the biggest surprise from the ACC, because kind of to give you guys an idea what we're going to do is Garrett's going to dive into the conference standings a little bit, and I'm just going to throw out the biggest surprise. So I have something to add to this. Is Miami, man. You touched on it a little bit right there. 0-7 in conference. They're 4-14 on the season. This is awful. I mean, just a couple years ago, Garrett, we were talking about Miami trying to make a run for a national championship. Jim Larinaga looked to have that thing going in full tilt. They had tons of money. The NIL should be good there, you would think. I don't really know what's going on, Garrett. It's really hard to watch. You see Larinaga step down right in the middle of all this. This is an absolute dumpster fire at a rapid pace. And really, for me, I guess I don't even really know what to chalk it up for. I guess just lack of talent at this point this season. Maybe they're not meshing, and they really didn't come together, and they quit on their coach. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I agree with all what you said. I mean, this team, the biggest issue with them, they have no talent. They have really no one that does anything extraordinarily well at any position, any spot on the floor. They can't really shoot. They do not have a guy to distribute the ball in this offense. They're a mess, man. And I hate to see Jim Larinaga go out on such a sour note. He has done so much and meant so much to Miami over the last couple decades, however long he's been there. It's really upsetting to see him leave in such a sour note.
Yeah, it really is. Because I found myself, on that run a couple of years ago, kind of cheering for 'em, man. I thought it was awesome. They had some really good players at that time. Norchad Omier was kind of headlining that thing. They had Wong, what was his name? Isaiah Wong. I mean, they had a plethora of players. I know I'm forgetting a few there, but yeah, really, really crazy to see the demise of that team at such a rapid pace. But hey, in this modern day of college basketball and college athletics with NIL and transfer portal, they really could get right back on this thing next season. But for this one, they're probably going to have to chalk it up. There's no recovering at this point. Moving on into the SEC. Garrett, what are you seeing in the SEC right now? Who are the big dogs? Who are the guys that are falling apart? And what do you have on this one?
Yeah, the SEC's panning out really just like we thought it would. It's a mess every day, every week. You have no idea what's going to happen. Heck, we just saw Vanderbilt take down Tennessee at home. What's up with Vandy this year? What a year to be a Vanderbilt student. You get to watch them beat Alabama at home. Now you get to storm the floor and watch them beat Tennessee. But we got Auburn at the one spot. Not super surprising. They're sitting at 5-0. We kind of knew that was going to be they'd be up there in the top 2 or 3 at this point. Obviously, losing Broom for an extended period of time is going to be a little bit challenging, but they are plenty good to keep that rolling. In the 2 spot, we have Ole Miss, Alabama, and Mizzou at 4-1. Big surprise to see, in my opinion, Ole Miss and Mizzou in that spot. We have not mentioned Florida or Tennessee, who are both sitting at 3-2. And then rounding out the SEC, we have Arkansas at 0-5. South Carolina at 0-5. South Carolina's expected what the hell's up with Arkansas. And it's terrible over there.
What's crazy to me too, and you touched on both teams that I had down for my biggest surprises, and we'll start off with Arkansas. Arkansas being 0-5 in conference play is absolutely unbelievable to me. They were a team that Garrett I actually thought that they could make a Final Four run. I talked about that in our very first episode. I thought they had all the pieces. I really thought Cal just had to go in there and just do an okay job as a coach. And it looks to me like he's running an outdated offense. It looks to me like they're not playing for him hard on defense. I was at that Mizzou Arkansas game this last weekend in Columbia, and a lot of things that I notice is you see Cal like he's yelling at the team to get back on in a hurry and play defense. Those guys are just jogging up and down the court, really not playing for him right now. It looks like they are star-studded too. I mean, this is a team that you could go on for 20 minutes about all the talent that they have on that roster, and it's just not coming together. It's really mind-boggling for me to see this. And we're sitting here talking about how they honestly may not make a tournament run now. I mean, it's looking really, really grim for them to make a tournament push. And don't be surprised if you don't see their name called on that selection show. On the flip side of this, a team that you just talked about too, and my hometown favorites, the team that I love and I'm always at, Mizzou. Absolutely spectacular start to the season for the Missouri Tigers. Dennis Gates really got this team going back in the right direction after a winless SEC season last year. Man, they are on fire right now. What's crazy to me, and I just talked about this before the episode a little bit, Garrett, is usually when you have a team that plays 10, 11 guys, that's because the team's not very good. This is a team that's got deep rotations, playing a lot of minutes throughout the whole entire roster for the most part, and they're getting in there, and this team's playing together. They lean on one another. They're scoring 85 points per game, and you can really tell that this is a team that just completely buys into the process right now, and they are the full definition of a team. You don't see anybody taking selfish shots. You don't see anybody doing anything ignorant. And I tell you one thing that for me, the X factor for this Missouri Tigers basketball team is Caleb Grill. When that dude gets hot, oh my Lord, look out. There is nobody better at shooting the three ball in the country. I think he does have the best 3-point percentage right now in the country, actually. And I think last I looked, I think it was around 49%, something along those lines. This guy is on fire right now. And the more minutes he gets, the better off this Mizzou team's going to be. It's really coming together, Garrett, and I am here for it.
Yeah, and I tell you what, the SEC, we touched on this probably in every single episode we've done. We always mention just how loaded this SEC conference is. And I failed to mention Kentucky sitting at 3-2. You have got a log jam of, the major teams of Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky at 3-2. And don't think they're out of this SEC race. This thing is just getting started. You have no idea what this is going to finish up to be. But I do want to touch on Arkansas. One thing, you kind of touched on a bit, and I think one of the big concerns I have with what's going on in Arkansas, and it's something Coach Cal used to be a mastermind of. At his time in Kentucky, one thing that he was really good at, he would bring in all these 5 stars, all these guys with really, really big egos, all wanting to do the same thing. They want to score the ball, they want to get to the league, they want to make money. That's all they want to do. And Coach Cal at Kentucky in his early years, although he didn't win a ton, he didn't win the big games, he found a way to mesh these guys to play together, become one. This Arkansas team, they have the talent with Boogie Fland, Wagner, and John L. Davis, that these guards are just as good as any guards Calipari's coached. And maybe in his coaching career, what he's failed to do is he can't mesh these guys together. It seems like it's a really selfish team. They do not want to run offense together. And that's where their struggles come in. They're good enough to win this conference if they find a way to play cohesive basketball.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, man. It's one thing where you don't really see like when you watch them run an offense, they're all flat-footed. If the ball's not in their hand, they're really not moving a ton. I mean, Adu, I forgot to say his name, and I butcher it every time, but Adu Taro, I think is how you pronounce it. I mean, this guy, he's good, don't get me wrong, but he should not be leading this team in points per game. And I think right now he is. I'm looking at it real quick just to make sure he is. I mean, and then you have Jonas Adu coming over from Tennessee. I mean, this is a team that just, you talked about it, man. They should have loads of opportunity. John L. Davis, this guy should be doing a lot more than what he is for this team right now. Just really, really below expectations. But you talked about something else with the SEC. I don't want to move on from them too quick just because of how damn good they are. I think we have 6 or 7 teams at 3-2, like you were talking about, Garrett. That's incredible, man. You're exactly right. This thing is wide open. And you talked about Ole Miss a little bit earlier. I love what Chris Beard's doing at Ole Miss. Didn't really see this kind of coming into fruition this quick, but I've listened to a couple of interviews from him, and he sounds. I know coaches always say this, but his was very reassuring. He sounded very confident that, like, hey, look, I knew we were going to be this good. Hey, I knew we honestly could be in contention for a national championship, and he convinced me. I mean, like I said, you hear a lot of coaches say that, and you're just like, you have to say that. But with him, it was like all right, man, I'm kind of buying into what you're saying too. It's working. So SEC is incredible.
Yeah, and big props to Beard. He made one, I'll call it acquisition. I guess it's he brings in a transfer that really kind of transformed this team into who they are. When he brought in Sean Padula from Virginia Tech, he established a point guard immediately. Not only a point guard who is going to protect the ball, but a point guard who can score, which, in my opinion, is the most important thing in college basketball. You have to have a point guard who can score at will. And he addressed that immediately. And that's, a big part of why you see Ole Miss sitting at 4-1 in the SEC. Granted, they have not played the top of the dogs in the SEC yet. We'll see what they look like when they, kind of get deeper into this and they start playing some really tough road games. But big props to them for sitting at 4-1 at this point. It's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Hell of a start. All right, let's move into the Big Ten a little bit here, Garrett. What are you seeing with the Big Ten as well? Are there any surprises for you? Is it crazy? I mean, obviously no Zach Edey anymore, but we're not talking about Purdue obviously as much as what we used to all the time. So what are you seeing with the Big Ten?
Yeah, we're not talking about Purdue. We probably should be. They're at 7-1. They're sitting at second in the Big Ten. The surprise to me, and you don't see this out of Izzo a lot. Michigan State sitting at the one spot at 7-0. They're always respectable in the Big Ten. They typically don't lead it at this point in the season, especially being 7-0, having the worst 3-point percentage in the Big Ten. Big start for them. It's surprising to me. Tied with Purdue, you have Michigan at 6-1, Wisconsin 5-2, Illinois, Indiana at 5-3. Rounding out the bottom, Ohio State at 5-2, surprising. Washington at 1-6, Minnesota at 1-6. Collin, your surprises?
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit earlier in the intro of this episode is Rutgers and Ohio State. Both these teams come in with some expectations. You kind of hear from them a little bit from their camps about how, yeah, we can make a run at this Big Ten thing this year. And like I said a second ago, too, no Zach Edey anymore. So all these teams felt like they had a real good fighting chance, especially inside. And you see Ohio State come in here at 2-5 through conference play so far. Rutgers at 3-4 through conference play so far. Just really not getting the job done at this point. Now, one thing with Rutgers I want to talk about, and I brought up Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey earlier. I feel like both those guys are doing their jobs for this Rutgers team. I mean, one's averaging 19, one's averaging 20 points per game. I think Rutgers are really struggling because they can't shoot free throws. I don't know if you've been really paying attention as much as I have necessarily, Garrett. When you watch Rutgers go to the free throw line, it is like a 50-50 shot if they're going to make them or not, especially late in the game. And that is not something that's going to win you games down the stretch. Really going to be tough for these two teams to make a push at making the tournament. I would say Ohio State really has none. Rutgers can maybe get back on this horse. I know you and I were texting the other night about how Rutgers are seeming to be kind of figuring things out slowly, and that's to be expected too with a young team like that, especially when you're led by two freshmen. So I think there's still a chance for them, but they really got to find it here. Last thing I want to talk about too, you are 100% right with Izzo and Michigan State. Usually they're a team that strikes late, and it takes them a while to get going. And if they can get it going and stay going like they are right now this early, they could really be scary down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. The free throw woes with Rutgers, you see free throw woes in two different ways. One, you have a big shooting free throws a lot who is just poor at shooting free
Yep.
throws. That's understandable. It's still not good. Missing free throws in college basketball is detrimental in itself. But the problem I have with Rutgers, I don't know the exact percentage of how many of their free throws come from either Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper, but it's a bunch because they're taking majority of the shots. Ace Bailey's a horrendous free throw shooter. A guy of
Horrible.
his a guy of his ability not being able to knock down free throws when he needs to is quite possibly one of the biggest issues you can run into in college basketball trying to close a game out. That is a huge concern for Rutgers going forward. One team, actually a couple teams I want to touch on that we haven't talked about yet. Michigan at 6-1. This team was projected to finish 10th in the Big Ten. Offensively, didn't really know where their points were going to come from. They have a couple new pieces to this offense. Obviously, bring in Vlad Golden from FAU. He's a monster. And Danny Wolf kind of inserting
Yeah,
himself in that starting rotation. Offensively, they cause a lot of issues. Starting two 7-footers is a
yeah,
matchup nightmare. And they're not your standard 7-footers who's, back down, post hook, free throws. Danny Wolf is going to step out, knock down threes. He might be, I don't know this for sure, he might be the leading assist man on this Michigan team. That duo is very, very difficult to defend. That's the main reason you find them at 6-1. Second team I want to touch on. I know they just had a really tough loss yesterday to Michigan State on the road. This Illinois team is legit, extraordinarily legit. Kasparis Jakobchonis, this is a hot take, is the best player in the Big Ten. He is the point guard I would take on my team, even over Braden Smith. I think his ability to score is
yeah,
a lot higher. I
yep.
think his basketball IQ probably isn't where Braden Smith is, but just from a pure point guard perspective, is good enough to essentially just take Illinois to the top spot in the Big Ten if they get hot. I watched them score 91 points without even trying against my Hoosiers. This team's legit.
Yeah, I agree with all that, 100%. I couldn't. There's no pushback from me. There's really no devil's advocate for me on any of that. I mean, I'm with you on that. Only thing I want to add here is you are right also about Ace Bailey shooting 60.6% from the free throw line. That is horrendous from a top recruit like him and from a guard. You are spot on with the big men struggling to shoot free throws. Still not acceptable, but way more acceptable than a top notch guard like Ace Bailey. That is horrible. And I think Dylan Harper's about 73%. That's still not what you want, especially like you said, when those guys are taking all of their shots. Not good at all. Going to have to figure that out if they're going to make any run whatsoever. Moving on to the Big 12, Garrett, the Big 12 for me is really entertaining as well. It's not the same Big 12 that we're used to seeing, top to bottom like we have the last few years, but still a really, really good basketball conference. And there's some really talented basketball teams in this conference. So go ahead and take it away and tell me what you got on your plate on this one.
Yeah, at the top spot with Houston at 6-0. If you remember in the first episode, we kind of talked about Houston's early struggles. And I kind of harped on just kind of relax, calm down. This team's bringing back 4 of their 5 starters. They'll find it. They will find it. It's just an early season woe. And they're sitting at the top spot at 6-0. They look like the dominant force in the Big 12. Behind them, Iowa State. Maybe I was the only one not on this Iowa State train. Did not see this coming. They're always getting the hype, kind of early season, a little bit of hype, but you see their offensive struggles year in, year out. They stick there for a while. They can't score the ball. They drop down. This team is way different. If I'm not mistaken, they're top 10 in offensive efficiency, top 10 in defensive efficiency. What a recipe for success. So you have them to 2. Arizona is at 5-1. I'm gonna be honest with you, Colin. How?
I didn't see Iowa State or Arizona either. I mean, I'm in the passenger seat of that bus with you. I saw neither one of these teams doing any of this.
Arizona's been a team in the past that's always in the top 10, but man, I feel like I watched 4 or 5 of their games early in the year, and it's like I would be okay never watching this again.
Yeah,
They look
yeah.
that bad. They look that bad. After Arizona, you have West Virginia and Kansas at 4-2, as well as Texas Tech. One of the big surprises, Baylor comes in at 3-3. And then at the bottom end, skipping a few teams, you have Kansas State, Iowa State at 1-5, Colorado at 0-6.
This my biggest surprise so far through the Big 12 is Baylor and how up and down. It's been a roller coaster for them, dude. Like there's no consistency. There's every time you turn in to the TV and watch a Baylor game, I myself feel like they're going to go win it, and I've been wrong more times than I've been right, especially when I sprinkle a little wager on it. I mean, this has been awful for me, a horrible start. I mean, and you talk about a team that's star-studded. I mean, they are top to bottom loaded with talent. They have Scott Drew as a head coach, who I think is one of the best in the business. I talked in our first episode how I thought Scott Drew is the best coach in the country, and I'm not trying to hop off that already because I still think he's there, and I still think he can get this team to find it. But man, we've got to have Jaden Nunn and Jeremy Roach be a little bit better. This is really not good performances from them. They got to be more consistent. Jaden Nunn can shoot the ball very well. I think they need to lean into that more often. You see Norchad Omier, it looks to me like there's times where he takes plays off. I hate that. Get his ass in there and be better. Get on him. Lean on him. He's been on big teams. Talked about Miami earlier. He was a big part of why Miami used to have success. Jimmy Roach was a part of the reason why Duke had success. I mean, we could go on for days why this team should be better. And it's not acceptable right now. It's horrible from them in this moment, in my opinion. And it's time to really get it going. DJ Edgecombe, being your number 2 leading scorer on your team as a freshman, he's good, don't get me wrong. But when I watch him play, he's a very raw freshman. He's got bounce. I think he could probably go win the dunk competition in college basketball right now. But when it comes to being a pure shooter and scorer, he should not be the number 2 guy on your team going and getting that job done. Now, if he is, and the rest of your team's performing, then you guys should be off to the races. You should be sitting at 16-1, something totally different than this. I think Nunn and Roach really need to get it going. And to circle back on your Arizona take, it's just a matter of time because Caleb Love is a walking ice cube, in my opinion. There are times where he'll shoot it from half court and make 3 out of 4, and there's times where he'll brick layups. So it's just a matter of time before that all comes down to reality and crumbles a little bit. I am not scared of Arizona if I'm any team in the Big 12 either.
I'm with you on everything. Kind of touching on Baylor because it is a surprise. This is a team that we expect, not perfection, obviously, but we expect them to be in that top 3 spot year in, year out in the Big 12. And honestly, this is probably one of the better rosters I think Scott Drew has had at Baylor. He's got 3 guards that really, in my opinion, should be able to take the game over at any point in time with Nunn, Roach, and Edgecombe. In my opinion, Edgecombe hasn't really taken the steps I'd like him to take at this point in the season. He looks very similar to week 1, game 1, in my opinion. But he's still, one of the top freshmen in the country, and Norchad Omier should be able to hold his own down low. So the struggles are concerning. But I'm with you. I'm not going to hit the panic button yet. I think their window to win the Big 12 is probably closed, in my opinion. There's just too many deep, deep teams up top that probably will not hit the 3-loss mark, in my opinion. I don't know if Houston will hit the 3-loss mark. So that window's probably closed. They need to, start focusing on their late season success, Big 12 tournament, March Madness, and see if they can build this team, mesh this team to kind of look a little bit better than they do now. My big Oh, go ahead.
Well, before we left Baylor, I just want to talk about how I'm pretty sure, Garrett, I took Baylor in our very first episode to go win the national championship. I mean,
Yep.
and I still think they can. You're right. Let's not hit the panic button. I agree with you. Turn the page past the regular season of the Big 12. Obviously, focus on winning games and making the tournament. But yes, I mean, when they get in the tournament, if they hit their stride, they could be very dangerous still. Robert Wright should not be, your number 3 scorer either when he's coming off the bench. So.
Right. I do want to touch on West Virginia. They're sitting at 4-2. They're in the 4 spot in the Big 12 right now. Team I didn't expect to be in that spot. Javon Small has essentially just put this team on his back. He's very Cam Jones-like from Marquette. He's kind of Mr. Do Everything. He's averaging about 25 and 5. They have a win at Kansas, huge win, and they have knocked off Iowa State. 2 great
huge
wins for West Virginia. This team may be better than we expected. I still don't think you'll see them hanging in the top 5 by the end of the year, but great start, very good promise. It's exciting to watch these games. It's just stuff you don't see in any other sport.
I mean, tier 1 wins, man. That's huge. You need those down the stretch. West Virginia, yeah, they can make some noise, rattle some cages. And to your point, I love seeing new teams, new faces do big things in these conferences. It's awesome to watch. Gonna move on to the Big East here. How about my St. John's Red Storm right now, boy?
Yeah, it was the first thing I was going to mention. The first episode, you said I think St. John's could win the Big East, and obviously our first episode together, I'm not gonna rat on you, but that's not. This conference is too deep. St. John's has no shot, and here they are, 7-1 at the top of the Big East. Behind them is Marquette at 6-1, very expected. Creighton sitting at 5-2, as well as UConn. You got Nova at 5-3. Xavier sitting at 4-4. A bunch of trash until you get down to DePaul, who I do want to say, huge congratulations to DePaul on their first conference win in 39 games. Huge congrats.
That's so crazy. That's still hard to wrap my head around. Yeah.
Wow. How embarrassing is that? But I do want to touch on your St. John Red Storm. Unbelievable what they've been able to do. They're so balanced. I believe they have 4 guys averaging double digits. RJ Lewis has turned into a premier scorer in college basketball, and in my opinion, one of the best players in the Big East. So I'm going to let you take it away with St. John's. Give me your opinion. I'll kind of add if I need to.
I love what they're doing, man. They and not to tie this back to like a Mizzou team, but they're a team to me that plays like a team, like the definition of a team. They're all bought into each other. You're right. They got four guys hitting in double digits. I talked before about how I think Kadari Richmond is my favorite player in the country. Not going to go light it up every night and give you 26 a night by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy that just kind of does it all, can kind of command the court, can be a leader, can really rally this team. Ejiofor, I mean, he's been very fantastic also this season. Just love this team, man. They're doing the right things. They're really showing me what I thought they could, and they're led by great coaching. And this is a team that is fully bought into the process, can rattle the cages down the stretch. And honestly, I still think, obviously more now than I did originally, can make a deep run at this thing, man. They are a very good basketball team. Long road ahead still, don't get me wrong, but I think right now they're playing with confidence, and that's one of the biggest things you could do, especially in this Big East Conference.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kadari Richmond, I know RJ Lewis is the leading scorer for St. John's. I think Kadari Richmond, if they lost him over Lewis, is probably a much more important loss.
Yeah.
I think he's third on the team in points, but he's just the glue that holds these guys together. He can do almost anything they need. He can guard 1 through 5. He's really good with the
Yeah.
basketball distributing. He's a really, really solid guy to have on any basketball team. Indiana would love to have a guy like that. We just
Yeah,
don't.
100%.
But he is the glue of this team. I'm really, really happy to see what they've done. I'm going to hope for your sake they hang on for bragging rights, but man, I still think it's Marquette's to lose.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that. I do. But it'd be wild if they really pulled this thing off. I think Garrett too. One thing for me, if St. John's can find the three ball because they're shooting 30% from the 3 point line, that is horrendous. Yeah, I think they're one of the worst teams in the country at that. They have to be. If they could just somehow find that, they really find some success, man. They're doing this without shooting the three, which in modern college basketball, modern any of basketball, the three is an absolute huge part, if not the most key part. And they are doing it the old school way without shooting the three ball and making it. So fantastic stuff from St. John's so far. I My biggest surprise for me is actually not St. John's. I was going to talk a little bit about Creighton here and how I feel like they are underperforming expectations for sure. I think they are really. I don't want to hit the panic button again, but they're one of those teams for me that, man, you always hear them. They're always ranked. You always got high expectations. Creighton this, Creighton that. Ryan Kalkbrenner, Ashworth, Pop Isaacs had a good roster, and here they are. They're sitting at 12-6. Way too many good players, way too well coached to have 6 losses already. I think for me, the biggest thing they got to find is taking care of the basketball. Tons of turnovers. They're averaging over 12 turnovers a game. That's not going to win you basketball games down the stretch, especially in March. That is not a recipe for success, and it's time for them to really pony up before it gets too late.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you to an extent. I think this Creighton team, they're just too good to consistently be mediocre. And I don't even know if mediocre is the right word to use. They just no consistency with
None.
Creighton. This weekend, Saturday, they get a huge win. Who obviously UConn is not the UConn of old, but they get a great win on the road against UConn. And I guarantee you, at some point this week, they're going to find a way to lose to Butler by 15.
Yep.
It's just kind of the Creighton we're used to seeing now, and it's just with the team they have is kind of unacceptable. With the point guard in Ashworth, who is rock solid
Yep.
everywhere. It's a roster that just should not be where they are. Obviously, they're at 5-2 at the Big East level, but overall 12-6 is not where they want to be.
No, not at all. And we don't really have the other conferences that we're going to talk about here, but just some teams that their conferences we didn't talk about. Credit to Gonzaga, still doing great things right now, still looking like a really good basketball program, sitting at 14-6. Also, a few more losses than they expected. I think they've got 2 conference losses, not what we expected from them at all in that conference. That's actually very shocking to me. I thought there was a real chance they would go undefeated in conference play. I mean, I really did. I don't think there was anybody that could beat them in that conference. Utah State, 6-1 in their conference right now. Memphis, 7-1 in their conference right now. So a couple of those teams' conferences that we didn't talk about, just want to shout them out a little bit. But yeah, on the Gonzaga thing a little bit, let's not drop any more of those games. You're better than that. Kind of like a Creighton thing almost. You're better than that. Go. You got way too many good players, especially for Gonzaga, man. There is no reason they should drop any more conference basketball games.
No, and the way that they're losing these games is to me it's embarrassing. You give up 90, I believe it was 94, 96 points to Oregon State. You give up 103 points to Santa Clara.
How bad is that, dude?
What are we doing here? That's just
Back to back.
that's just not that's just displaying no effort. That's only caring about the offensive side of the ball. You've got to
Yes.
buckle down a little bit, play a little bit of defense. I'm not expecting defensive excellence out of Gonzaga. That's just not who they are, but you've got to play a little bit.
Not. This is just a off the cuff wild take, and maybe this is a homer take for me a little bit here. Is it crazy to you as well to see a team like is it preseason bias, I should say, to see a team like Gonzaga still ranked at the 16 coming off back-to-back losses to Oregon State and Santa Clara, giving up 98 whatever it was plus points, and you don't see a team like Mizzou get in these rankings. And Mizzou has lost to Memphis, ranked, Kansas, ranked, Auburn, number one team in the country. I mean, this is kind of maybe I'm being a homer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
No, I completely agree. I was going to use Mizzou if you didn't as the example. Gonzaga is ranked simply because of the name on the front of the jersey. If it's not Gonzaga, this team is, I'm not even kidding you, probably 40 something. I mean, they're not even in the receiving votes category. You can't lose to Oregon State and Santa Clara and be in that category at all. When you got a team like Mizzou getting wins over number one Kansas, wins on the road against Florida. Mizzou will obviously be ranked this coming week. I would expect they would get in that top 25, but it's all about the name on that front of the jersey, and Gonzaga's a much bigger brand in college basketball
yeah.
in Missouri.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And that's kind of what I chalk it up to. Maybe a little preseason bias, a little blue blood activity. And I understand that. But when it really comes down to the nitty gritty at the end, and we're seeding these basketball teams in the tournament, let's make sure we're getting this right. I mean, that's the only frustration. And if our fans out there listen to the college football version of this, I talk about the same things. Not necessarily for Mizzou, just in general, man. The preseason bias shit kills me, and keeping some of these teams ranked, no matter what the sport is, just because you don't want to look wrong from the beginning, is very frustrating to me. And we'll have more time to talk about that down the stretch, Garrett, especially when we get into the tournament seating and things like that. I'm sure you and I will have a full document to talk about what's our thought process on that stuff. But real quick, we're going to give a Wooden Award update. We're going to talk about the top four. And I'm going to ask Garrett if he had to pick from these top four who he would go with, or maybe make a case for somebody other than Cooper Flagg, because obviously that's the clear-cut front runner right now. Janai Broome at number 2, Cam Jones at number 3, Eric Dixon at number 4. If you guys remember, Garrett and I both made cases for Janai Broome and Cam Jones in our first episode, and those guys are both still right here in the hunt of this thing. I feel like if Janai Broome didn't miss some action, I think he would be really pushing the number 1 spot. So just want to get your takes on this real quick, Garrett. Or is there anybody else outside of the top 4 you think could make a push down the stretch?
I like the way the top four is sitting at this point in time. I think obviously these four players have been probably the most dominant in college basketball to this point. Cooper Flagg is going to get all the attention, and rightfully so, right? He can do it all. He is a prodigy in basketball.
Yeah.
We don't see many guys with this level of talent across the board. I think he's leading Duke in points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. I told my wife Sydney, who's a huge Duke fan, I said, the fact you're not glued to the TV every time this guy's playing is upsetting, because you won't see anything like this for a long time. It's truly unbelievable. I don't think, though, he is the most important player of the four listed to their team. I think if you take Cooper Flagg off of Duke, I still think they're respectable, right? They still have guys who can put the ball at the bottom of the bucket.
They still find success.
They
Some
still
level
find
of
success. Cooper Flagg takes them to that next level.
Yes.
The guy that if you take Eric Dixon
I
off
knew
of
it. Yep, I agree.
Villanova, what even are they? DePaul at that point?
Yeah.
They're terrible without him. He is their entire offense. Obviously, Poplar can score a little, but he is just a stepping stone to what Eric Dixon does for that team. He is the only reason we win any basketball games whatsoever. So if it's
Yep.
a most valuable player award on how they determine the Wooden Award, Eric Dixon is the most valuable player of the four listed to his team.
Uh, I totally agree, and not to go down this rabbit hole again. This is the same argument I made for, the Ashton Genty college football when it comes to the Heisman. You remove Eric Dixon from his team, we're not talking about Villanova ever this season. You remove Cooper Flag, like you said, from Duke, they still have some level of success. We have removed Janai Broome from Auburn for a few games, and they're still having some success. I think if you remove Cam Jones, I think he would be a bigger loss than Cooper Flag or Janai Broome for their teams, but I don't think he's an Eric Dixon caliber loss. I'm in total agreement with you. That was the direction I was going to go if you didn't, and I fully support that take, without a doubt. Honestly, it's Cooper Flag is credit where credit's due, like you said. I mean, this is some next level shit he's doing. So I get it. I totally get it. And he plays for Duke, man. Let's be honest. So moving on. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, all four of these guys, they have a level of importance to their team. Obviously, each of
Yes.
these teams, they're not nothing, but they are much less successful without them. And honestly, Villanova is not successful in general at this point, but they turn into one of the bottom teams in the Big East without him. I just think, with Cam Jones' situation, he does, like we mentioned, everything for Marquette. But just like you said, if you take Cam Jones away, they're still okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. And I don't think there, and I don't wish this, obviously, I'm just not trying to talk this into reality, but the only way this isn't Cooper Flag's award is if he doesn't play a game the rest of the season. Like that, I mean, at this point, it is 1000% his to lose. Put your house on it. You're not going to lose your house. You're going to get another house because this is wrapped up already the way I see it late here in January. Gonna
Yeah, the only guy that's not on this list that I think, he's probably, I don't know where he is outside these top four. I would expect him to be 5, 6 in that range. Mark Sears for Alabama is
stud.
so good. He's so important to Alabama too. I mean, he's obviously, this team is super, super deep. They have a lot of scoring options across the board, but Mark Sears is kind of the guy that gets these boys going. And I think at the end of the year, if you see, one of these four guys drop off, Mark Sears will be that guy in the top four.
Mark Sears is currently tied for fifth.
There
He's
we go.
tied for fifth with Braden Smith from Purdue. And if you ask me, Mark Sears is much more deserving of being on this list than Braden Smith. No shot at Braden Smith, but I mean I think Mark Sears is a better basketball player than Braden Smith. So going to move into our top 8 national championship odds the way it sits right now. Number 1 Duke, 2 Auburn, 3 Iowa State, 4 Houston, 5 Tennessee, 6 Alabama, 7 Kentucky, 8 Florida. Garrett, if you had to pick somebody here or take 2 teams here, who you rolling with?
I'm going to try to just stray away from Duke just to be different. I think Duke is very deserving that top spot, but I'm still sticking with my pick preseason. I think Alabama has everything it takes to win the national championship. We just saw them put up 103 points on the road at Rupp Arena in Kentucky. What a game
Huge.
that was. Unbelievable. I think Alabama still has what it takes to win the national championship. Their level of depth is a little bit concerning to me, but honestly, these guys are good enough. They're smart enough. They rarely get in foul trouble. You see Cliff Amore get in foul trouble every now and then, but he's kind of just a bowling ball down low. It's kind of what he does. He's not that offensively important to this Alabama team as he is defensively. So I'm still going to rock with the Tide to get the job done. And I think I'm going to steal your thunder with Auburn. You had Auburn preseason. I think the SEC come tournament time is going to prove exactly why we keep harping on why the SEC is the best conference in college basketball. And I think you will see 2 SEC teams possibly match up against each other in the national championship. Auburn has the depth, they have the shooting, they have the athletic ability, the coach, and the player and Broome to get it done.
Love it. Obviously, I was going to roll with Auburn too. To give it a little bit different take here, I'm not going to go with Duke either because I truly don't, and obviously I don't predict the future, but I truly don't think Duke gets it done. I mean, I think this is obviously one of the better Duke teams in quite some time, but we've seen Duke in this situation many a times before and still drop the ball. For me, Iowa State is not my pick either. You see a team like Iowa State. I think at some point they're damn good, but at some point I just keep telling myself they got to come back to reality a little bit, maybe. And I don't know if it happens in the tournament for them. I like Houston a lot. I can make a case for Houston, but the team that I'm going to make a case for is Florida. We have five SEC teams at the top eight in odds right now. And a team like Florida, for me, I know Mizzou went in and beat them at Florida. That was a slap in the face for Florida. I think they probably lost that game. Obviously, Mizzou, I don't know if you guys watched that game out there, but Mizzou shot the lights out. And every time Florida would get up, Mizzou would make another three. Florida came right back in this ball game. They were down like 20 at one point, got it down to 1 or 2 points, and Mizzou just gets hot again. So that game was truly just a no matter what Florida did, it wasn't going to happen that night. And that just happens in basketball sometimes. Teams get hot, teams win basketball games. And you have Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, Alex Condon. This team, they can rebound, they can shoot, they can distribute the ball. They're well coached. I think for me, this is a team that I could truly see making a deep run in March Madness. You and I talked about this at length. When it comes to the tournament, it's all about guard play, and this team has two guards that are fantastic. I feel very comfortable with Elijah Martin and Clayton at any point in time pulling up from anywhere on the court. I feel very comfortable with the ball in these guys' hands. These are two next level, really good basketball players that you're going to be watching at a different level down the stretch. This is a really good basketball team.
Yeah, I'm with you on Florida. The thing that scares me about Florida, their stud, Walter Clayton, he's really good. He's a really, really good basketball player, but he is probably the most inconsistent star in college
Yeah,
basketball I've watched. And come March, you can't be inconsistent. Obviously, bad games are going to happen. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast in this sport. But it seems like one out of every two games, you're gonna see Walter Clayton put up like a 3 for 14 type game, which is
yeah,
not good at all come tournament time.
yeah. He absolutely is a guy, to your point, that will take, I can't say take nights off, but just doesn't have it. Like, to your point, no consistency. I feel like some of these guys like Clayton, when they know they're that damn good, they don't always bring that intensity every night on a Tuesday night basketball game. But I feel like those are the guys that when you get into the tournament really ratchet it up, right? Like I feel like those are the guys that are like, all right, this is why I played this, long season. This is why we worked. I'm here now, and I'm ready to get it going, and I'm ready to showcase who I am. I'm on national television, and it's time to go. I feel like he is a guy to me that strikes me to kind of have that mentality. So I think if they lean into that a little bit and manage and keep some confidence and really rally the rest of the season, I could see it, man. But do I think it's more likely than Auburn? No. Do I think it's more likely than Duke? Honestly, no. But I just want to make a case for another team. Like I see Tennessee on this list, I see Kentucky on this list, and those two teams to me aren't teams that I could actually see go win the national championship. Like the Tennessee team for me, every time I've watched them win a basketball game, and maybe this is just me, every time I've watched them win a basketball game or play a basketball game, I just kept asking myself, how are they this good right now? Like I just don't feel like they're a team for me that has all the pieces to go win it. They got great guard play, yeah, they do. And Chaz Lanier can get as hot as anybody from the 3-point line in the country, but it's just something about that team for me is not it.
You just absolutely took the words out of my mouth. You before you brought up Tennessee, I was going to cut you off and kind of hit on them. I hate this team. I can't
Yeah, man.
stand them. If you have potential, against a couple weeks ago when they played Florida, I think they lost, and this is a realistic score. I think it was 43-73.
Horrible basketball game, dude.
If
73-43. Yep.
if you have the capability, now obviously you're gonna have off nights, right? But 43 points is embarrassingly bad, and that's kind of the Tennessee norm. Like that's kind of who they are. If you can't at least score the ball consistently, you're not going to win the March Madness tournament. You're just simply not. This has turned into an offensive sport, and if you can't consistently get yourself to the 70s, 80s, even maybe push 90 a time or two, you're not going to do anything. And this Tennessee team, how they were number one team in the country a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, beyond me because they're not very good.
beyond.
You
They're not.
touch on it. Chaz Lanier's good. Zakai Ziegler's a really good point guard, but other than that, you can't rely on Zakai Ziegler to carry you offensively. He's just not going to do it. This team is just not. I would rather see a Purdue make noise than a Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only reason that they've had any level of, I can't say any level of success, but the success they've had this season is because Barnes is such a great coach. I mean, we saw them play Virginia early on in the season. I think they scored like 21 or 22 points in the first half. I mean, this is a team that when it gets ugly and they go cold, they don't have a guy to go give the ball to go get a bucket.
No,
And I'm drawing a blank on what his name was for last year. Spectacular basketball
neck,
player.
Dalton neck.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was a guy where, okay, when you got in a lull and it got dreadful, you just gave him the ball and said, hey, go to work, get us back on track. I don't see that with this team this year. Chaz Lanier is that guy for them. And there are times when Lanier can't get it going either. And when he can't get it going, this team can't get it going.
That when Lanier struggles is when you see them score 40, 45 points. And that's just,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have more than one scoring option to be a team considered in the top 8 for the national championship. Like, that is exactly what we touched on earlier. That is preseason bias.
Yep.
And they're 4-3 in SEC play. What have they done to earn this spot to be a top 8 favorite to win the Natty?
It's mind-boggling to me because especially in the tournament, man, any good basketball team is going to they're going to off-ball pressure Lanier. Like they're gonna deny the ball from him as much as they can and make somebody else go beat them. And right now, I don't think they have other guys that can go beat tournament level basketball teams, especially when every team is ratcheting it up every night because it's win or go home at that point. So,
Right.
and I think the same way for Iowa State. I mean, maybe Iowa State will prove me wrong, but when I watch an Iowa State, I'm just like, at some point, this has to change. At some point, this can't keep going.
Right.
So that is the top 8, and I do think there's some preseason bias there. Like a team we didn't talk about much there was Houston. Houston can go win this whole damn thing. And you were very much so spot on in our first episode. Hey, don't panic. They are going to find it, and they have, and they will continue to find it. And like a thing we say often with these good teams, well coached. So
Right.
they can get the job done.
There's a reason you see a lot of I'm not going to call them blue bloods, but because Houston's not a blue blood, but you start seeing a lot of repeat teams and Elite Eights, Final Fours, Sweet 16s. They typically have 2 things in common, and we touch on this all the time, but I can't stress it enough. Good coaching, solid guard play. You
That's
have
it,
those
man.
2 things, you're fine. You're going to have a chance to make a run. And I think, of those 8 teams in the top 8, about half of them are missing one of those 2 things. It's kind of
Yeah.
why we always touch on Alabama, Auburn. They have great coaching, great guard play.
Yep. I couldn't agree more, man. Those are the teams that are really going to make some noise. Without the guard play, without the great coaching, you will get punched in the mouth in March. That's just all there is to it. This you saw Purdue year in and year out have Zach Edey, the most dominant guy in college basketball, would go in, and Painter's a great coach, but you'd go in and you had young guards that just couldn't really make the difference in the end when these teams deny ball on the big man down low. So that is absolutely key to success when it comes to the tournament. Garrett, I don't have much else to add, man. I think we covered all our bases. I'm glad to be back. I always love doing this with you. I love talking college basketball. Anytime we get to do this is fantastic. If you have anything else to add, knock it out. Let me know, and we'll cover it real quick.
I think I'm good, Colin. I got, one thing to say is go Hoosiers. Surprisingly, I will say surprisingly, I didn't touch on them at all, just because I don't want to have a ton of recency bias or fandom bias with the Hoosiers. But the fact they're 5-3 in the Big Ten, with how they looked early in these, early season tournaments, really surprising to me. Really surprising.
Yes.
They got a couple road wins. They beat Ohio State on the road in overtime. Last Friday, they got a win on the road against Penn State. 2 kind of wins, but still road wins. I'm happy for them. I'm hoping, they can kind of keep the ship running because I don't want to see Woodson leave on such a sour note.
No, he doesn't deserve that. He's had too much success, too good of a coach to really let that happen. I did think there was a time, Garrett, where they were quitting on him. I really did, and if I were you, would have been full blown panic button for me there for a little bit. But I'm with you, man. Hey, turn the page, get back on it. And the Big Ten's a conference that is, in my opinion, still kind of
Mhm.
up for grabs and can make some noise and go get that thing done.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, they suck. I'm they suck. They're not winning. They're not winning anything in the Big Ten. But it's at least good to see them win a couple games. They suck because they can't shoot. They
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 cannot shoot.
they have no guards who can really on command get a bucket. Obviously, Ballow's a stud, but they don't have anything it takes to win big, meaningful games.
Talk about a guy that takes nights off.
Ballow.
Omar Ballo. Whew, boy.
Yep.
I mean, there are times where if they were had more talent and a better roster, his ass should just be benched for like 2 or 3 games. Like, hey, dude, you ain't doing shit. You're just gonna sit right here and think about what you didn't do.
Right.
But man, yeah, college basketball has been great as always. Love this. There's nothing. Honestly, I'm a huge college football fan, but there's nothing more fun for me than college basketball, especially on a Tuesday night. We've had loaded slates all season long, and that's going to continue on, especially with how deep these conferences have really gotten. And I chalk a lot of that up to with the NIL and transfer portal stuff, man. It's really spreading out talent, really making night in, night out entertaining. Hell, we've had Wednesday night games be great, Friday night games be great. I mean, this is awesome, awesome season, and I cannot wait for the tournament. It's going to be really exciting.
Sure will. Yeah, these episodes will be, with the holidays past, all the stuff involving holidays. These episodes will be much more regular. We're getting deep,
Absolutely,
deep, deep into college basketball. Really important time this season, kind of building up that March resume. So you'll be seeing a lot more of us.
absolutely. We will be here on a more consistent basis. Cannot wait to keep doing this thing with Garrett. But with all that being said, you can follow us on X at DT_sports_, Facebook, Deep Threat Sports Network, TikTok, Deep Threat Sports Network, Instagram, Deep Threat Sports with a Z, YouTube, Deep Threat Sports, Spotify, Deep Threat Sports. Once again, this is Foul 'em Hard. That's Garrett. I'm Colin. Hey, Garrett, man. Until next time, buddy. Peace.
Good seeing you, buddy.